So I'm going to look at olivine and plagioclase composition. It's in a different drill core, but it's in the same general area. So here's where the Kimberley core that we passed through two presentations. We're going to look at the Combined core. So it's a little further away, and it was drilled a little bit deeper. It's all salt, pretty much. So if you're just looking at rock type, it's not that interesting, but we're going to look more at the microscale. So this is what the subvariable salt looks like. It's obtained from drilling like this. They use like a diamond bit and they drill down, and you can get different sizes of core, but that's what it looks like. And it's still aciculate, even though it's pretty far beneath the surface. So we're going to look at the olivine and plagioclase, which usually form the phenocryst, which are the larger crystals. So the plagioclase, it's got the polysynthetic twinning, which is typical. And then every now and then, it's not super common, but you'll see partial resorption, which can come up as like kind of jagged edges along the plagioclase, and then it can look kind of pitted in the middle. And then it can form agglomerates, which are like aggregates of crystals, and that's not as common either, but it's worth mentioning because it happens often enough. The zoning comes into play a little bit later. We'll talk more in detail about it, but it's got a lot of oscillatory zoning. And then the size depends on the flow. There's over 300 different flows that are through the 2 kilometers of the salt that we're going to look at. And they range from 0 to 6 millimeters old. So the olivine also formed agglomerates. They're a little prettier to look at, a lot more colors. Kind of looks like stained glass. They have inclusions of chromes spinel, which are these kind of black squares that you see here. Those form a little bit later, and they become important later on with some of the tests that we want to do. So they have normal diffuse and sharp zoning, which is just the composition changing as it goes out to the rims. And we'll see cooler pictures of that a little bit later. But these ones are usually what would show up as phenocryst. The plagioclase isn't always there, but the olivine is always over there. And they're usually a lot smaller than the plagioclase phenocryst. So this is an olivine crystal here on the left. So we used electron microprobe analyses to determine the composition. The FO here stands for forsterite. It's the magnesium-rich end number of olivine. What we typically see is very high cores going to the low rims. And then with plagioclase, it's a little bit different. You kind of see this oscillatory zoning where it'll go from high to low, over and over again. So that's a lot more common. But despite the difference in the zoning, you see the composition between the plagi and the olivine being fairly, they follow each other in depth. So this is a plot of the plagioclase compositions over here and the olivines over here. And the olivines have a wider spread in their composition, but if we look at the average values of the cores, they seem to mirror each other pretty well. So one of the main things we were looking at when we were analyzing these different crystals was to see if there's going to be kind of a shift in the composition as the plume interacted with the overlying crust passing over it. We don't really see that. It's fairly consistent as it goes up. We see these spikes here, which are mirrored on both crystals, which could have been due to crustal contamination or something that would have increased the iron content in the flow. But they're fairly consistent, and so something else would have had to control what was going on. And we're still missing a bunch of analyses here with the depth. I need to work on that still. It takes a while though. The microprobe analysis sometimes can take a long time to do, so we're working on it. So for now, we're saying that there isn't a temporal trend. Once we fill in the gaps, we'll be able to say for sure. So one thing that we did was we did some element dot maps, and we would load these into ArcGIS, assign false color to it, and then try to draw some profiles. So these just have to do with relative raster values. We're still trying to correlate the raster to actual weight percent. But the the magnesium and the iron, they follow each other pretty well. And every now and then you'll see really sharp, So every now and then you'll see really sharp zoning, and then a lot of times you'll see this more correct. So the middle of the crystal is right here on all of these. And then these random spikes that you see, we just need to clean up the data a little bit more. Every now and then it would hit something like inclusion or fracture there. So that's what those are. So it's not anything terribly fascinating. And then what we did was we plotted these relative raster values against each other. And again, those outliers are from the fractures and the inclusions. But we see a nice trend with as the iron increased, the magnesium would decrease. So these are some more false color images, except rather than doing just relative raster values, these are actual traverses that we did on the probe. And even between crystals, you see the same pattern that follows each other quite nicely. These are more trace elements here. They're a little harder to measure on the microprobe because they're fractions of weight percent. But even with that, we still see some nice trends that are consistent between the different crystals. And here's an example where you can see the zonation quite nicely. The larger crystals seem to have more sharp zonation, and then the smaller crystals, it's more diffuse, so it's a lot more gradual. So these are the chemical analyses of pretty much all the crystals that we looked at. And they show some nice patterns with positive correlations being fairly consistent, as well as the negative correlations. The trace elements are a little harder to measure, so that's why you see these wider spreads here between all of these. But despite that, you can still see the trends. They're fairly consistent. And this is just all in the olive area here. And then with the calcium, you see like this other trend down here, which is kind of suspicious, and it's not anything fascinating. It was more of a calibration error on our part. So we believe that the top trend is the true trend because a lot more of the analyses fall within that range. So this is a comparison of the olivine crystals from the Jemima core with other olivine crystals in different rocks. And something that's worth noting is that the magnesium content. So the dunite is just basically like a pure olivine rock. It comes from very primitive natural composition, very high magnesium compared to the other rocks. And then the ferrogabbro is more evolved with very low magnesium. And the Jemima core, which is expected, it falls within the same values as other basalts that we've seen. So that helps us know that it's got a composition of salts similar to the mid-ocean ridge or intracontinental basalts. So it helps us know that it did come from where we think it did. And then I mentioned that the chromium spinels are important because it helps us determine the eruption temperature. This is from, these are some analyses that we did from a paper by Coogan. And what he suggested was measuring the aluminum content in the chromium spinels and in the olivine and comparing it and plugging it into this formula right here. So something that's interesting is that even though we only looked at 2 crystals so far, you still see kind of a wide spread in temperature, which you'd think if it's the same section you'd be a lot more clustered, but it still shows a wide spread. And that might be due to the aluminum content in different crystals. And also we're trying to measure really small values, so it might just be due to limitations of the microprobe that we use. But even then, it still shows a temperature that is kind of what we expected, around 1272. For hotspot basalts, I think it's typically higher than that, but at least it's within a normal range. So what we're going to do is, I think we're going to look at more. This is only 2 samples that we looked at. We're going to try to use some more and maybe compare with some other thermometers that people have done in the past to see if this is a method that we can use to determine the eruption temperature. So in summary, we don't see any temporal trends so far from our data, but we still have to fill in some gaps. So that's something I'm going to be working on, filling in the gaps of the deeper basalts. And this is only over 6 million years, and I mean, it goes deeper than that. That's all that we have access to, because drilling is very expensive and costs hundreds of dollars per meter. So The eruption temperatures, even with our wide range, is typically over 1,200 degrees. And as I see more thermometers correct, but I guess we're going to have to look at some more thermometers to compare. There's variation between flows, but even throughout the entire 2 kilometers that we look at, you still see the same minerals throughout the different rocks. And variations are something that we can look at a little bit more, and we can also look at the different alterations there as well. And then the olivine and plagioclase, they share strong correlation, but the olivine seems to display a wider spread in composition. And I'm not quite sure why, but it's something that we might try to